Okay, y'all, this is 2.1a. This part is going to be long division of polynomials. And you did long division, 3rd, 4th grade, somewhere in there with regular numbers. We're going to review that process. And then we're going to take it a little further. And we're going to do it with things with x's and such. So, if we review, a means 12 divided by 6. And we know that's just 2. But if we do 14 divided by 6, that's not a whole number. So look at 6. How many times does 6 go into 14 without going over? And that is 2 times. Then we multiply the 2 by 6 and we get 12. Then we subtract that 12. 14 minus 12 is 2, and that is our remainder. And we are going to work with remainders as we do this. So 2 remainder 2 is our solution. Now, what that actually means is 2 and 2/6, but we don't write mixed numbers and we would want to reduce that anyway. Don't use a mixed number as a final answer with a numeric problem, but we will use the remainders with our polynomials. So let's try another one. Let's go with C. We are dividing 318 by 5. So we look to see if 5 goes into 3, and it does not. So we look to see if 5 goes into 31, and it does. Goes in 6 times. So we multiply 6 by that 5, and we get 30. And then we subtract that 30 to give us a 1. We're not done here because we still have another digit. So we bring down that 18. And now we're looking at how many times 5 goes into 18. 5 goes into 18 3 times. Multiply 3 times this 5 is 15. Subtract, we get 3. That is our remainder. So 63 remainder 3 is the answer to that division. Now, to check this, we want to think of this in its mixed number form. That is 63 and 3 over 5. And so to check that, we create that improper fraction. So we multiply 5 by 63, and then we add the 3. So 5 times 63 is 315. Add the 3, that is 318, which is what we were dividing into, so we're good here. Now, we're going to do this now with polynomials, things with exponents and powers and such. So we see example 1. We're taking that first parentheses divided by x minus 2. So we are going to write it in terms of the division symbol. And so we see underneath the division symbol, we see 3x to the 4th, and we have this 0x to the 3rd minus 8x squared minus 11x plus 1. Here's the deal with that 0x to the 3rd, okay? Our problem went from 4th power to 2nd power. It skipped a 3rd power. For this process to work, we need a 3rd power written down, so we need 0x to the 3rd power inserted. So whatever power is the highest, in this case 4, we need to use every power less than 4. So we have to have a 4th power, then a 3rd power, a 2nd power, a 1 power, and a no power. Once we have all of those terms in, we can do this division. And here's the trick to this division. We take the first term under the symbol and we divide that by the first term on the outside. And that is how we get the result that's on top. So let's do this. Let's look at this first division. We have 3x to the fourth as our first term under. So 3x to the fourth, we divide that by x. That divides off 1 power of x. So that's 3x to the third. That's the first thing that goes on top, is 3x to the third. Now, just like when we did this with the whole numbers, we multiply. So we'll multiply 3x to the third times x. That's 3x to the fourth. And we'll multiply 3x to the third times negative 2. That's negative 6x to the third. Now, what should happen here? The next thing we need to do here is subtract. And when we subtract, we need to subtract every term. So we're going to subtract 3x to the fourth. We're going to subtract negative 6x cubed. So that ends up adding. We change all those signs so we can add. Now, what should happen every single time is this first term should zero out. If it doesn't, there's a mistake in there somewhere. So, doing the combining, first term zero out, 0x to the third plus 6x to the third just gives us 6x to the third. Now, that's why we needed the 0x to the third term, so that when we started combining like terms, we would have them lined up. Now, do what we did before, bring down the next term, that's minus 8x squared. And then we'll do the same process again. We'll take the first term underneath, that is 6x to the third, this 6x to the third, and we divide it by the first term on the outside, x. And again, that just divides off a power of x. The 6 is still there, and now we have x squared. So plus 6x squared goes on top. Just like before, we multiply. 6x squared times x is 6x to the third. 6x squared times negative 2 is negative 12x squared. Now we subtract. So we'll subtract and subtract. The first terms should zero out, and they do. They're the same. And then we do the subtraction. Negative 8x squared plus 12x squared is 4x squared. Now, just like before, bring down the next term. So that's minus 11x. And then we'll do our division. We take the first term on the outside, first term underneath, 4x squared. We divide it by the first term on the outside, that's x. The 4 stays. X squared divided by x is 1 power of x. So plus 4x goes on the top. Now, distribute this. 4x, it's multiplied by x. It's 4x squared. 4x gets multiplied by negative 2. That's negative 8x. Now we subtract. Subtract, change the sign to subtract. The first terms should zero out. 4x squared minus 4x squared really does zero out. And then do the subtraction. Negative 11x plus 8x is negative 3x. Now, we bring down the next term. That's a plus 1. Bring that term down. And then we do the same thing again. Take the first term underneath, that negative 3x. Divide it by the first term on the outside, that's x. When we divide that out, that's negative 3. So then we take this negative 3 and we distribute it. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 2 is plus 6. And now we need to subtract. So change the negatives to positives, change the positives to negatives, and we can subtract. Negative 3x plus 3x really does equal 0, so that zeroes out. Then we can do this subtraction. 1 minus 6 is negative 5. And we don't have anything else to bring down. So we're done. This negative 5 is our remainder. Remainder, negative 5. Now, that negative remainder feels weird, but I promise it's okay on these. So, here's our answer. Now, it's written in a pretty yucky form right now, and we're going to clean that up a little bit. There's our process. So, to write the solution, write everything that's on the top. 3x to the third plus 6x squared plus 4x minus 3. And then the remainder, I have to scoot that over. And that remainder is a minus. And it's 5 for the remainder over this divisor, x minus 2. And this is our final answer. Ta-da! Okay, that was a lot of steps, and I know. There's a lot of little places to make mistakes here. The best advice I can give you is be careful. All right, let's check out another one. Check out B. First thing we're going to want to do is write it in the division bar. It starts with an x to the third power, so 6x to the third minus 4x squared plus 3x minus 2. We had a third power, a second power, a 1 power, and a no power. So we do have all the powers we need. Okay, and that will be divided by 2x squared plus 1. That's a second power and a no power. So we skipped an x to the first power. So when we write this on the outside, we have to go 2x squared plus 0x plus 1. And that is so all of our like terms add up properly. Because that denominator, the bottom, skipped that first power, we had to put a first power in the problem. Now, from here, the process is exactly the same. I mean, exactly the same. We start with the first term inside, divide it by the first term outside. So 6x to the third over 2x squared. 6 divided by 2 is 3. X to the third divided by x squared is x. And then we take that 3x and we distribute it. 3x times 2x squared is 6x to the third. 3x times 0x is 0x squared, or just 0. Then 3x times 1 is plus 3x. Now, we subtract. Remember, we subtract every term, and that first term should zero out, and it does. 6x to the third minus 6x to the third really does zero out. So, do the rest of the arithmetic. Negative 4x squared minus 0x squared is negative 4x squared. Plus 3x minus 3x is 0x. And that feels weird, but it's okay. That's what it ended up equaling. And then we need to bring down that minus 2 to do the next step. Repeat the process. take the first term on the inside, divide by the first term on the outside. So negative 4x squared will divide by 2x squared, and that gives us negative 2. So minus 2 is what goes on top, and we continue the process. We multiply. Negative 2 times 2x squared is negative 4x squared. Negative 2 times 0x is plus 0x. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. And now we subtract, change all of the signs, then add. So negative 4x squared plus 4x squared really does zero out. 0x minus 0x is still 0x, or just 0. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So this remainder is equal to 0. It does not have a remainder. So our answer here is simply 3x minus 2. There's no remainder, no reason to write anything else. There's long division. Synthetic division will be in the other video for this lesson. Bye, y'all.